Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On MLB listeners get $50 off any purchase of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. So use code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's BlueNile.com.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB. This is the podcast where we talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you look at me on the lower thirds, if you're watching me on the YouTubes, you know you can call me Sully. Right there. You call me Sully. Today's episode, we are going north of the border, kind of. The two people we're talking to are actually here in America. But do you know what? They represent the team from up north, from Locked On Expos. Locked On Blue Jays. We're going to have Matt Bonaparte and Ben Shulman talking about the state of the team that I picked to win the American League pennant. How's that prediction going so far? Well, we're here at roughly the 1/3 mark of the season. And I don't feel bad about the prediction. I don't feel bad. Here's the deal. You can follow us wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On MLB, making us your first listen. And hey, you can follow some of the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And be sure to tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On MLB. So, yeah, the beginning of the year, I picked the Blue Jays, who coming down the stretch last year, we're actually playing the best baseball of any team, and they happened to lose one game that Robbie Ray started, probably really cut their chances of going to the playoffs last year at the hamstring. And they had a bizarre offseason where they lost the Cy Young Award winner and a top 3 MVP candidate, and everybody on the planet thought they won the offseason. That's a weird offseason. But who am I to talk about the Blue Jays? Why don't I bring in people who actually know a little something about the Blue Jays? We have the relatively new hosts of Locked On Blue Jays coming up to the plate, Ben Shulman. How you doing, Ben?
I am good. I am technically north of the border right now. So we are
Okay.
For the meantime, we are qualifying up from Toronto. But I'm doing great. Good to see you. Glad you picked the Jays. You should be feeling pretty good about that prediction. It's getting better, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Well, we're good. But when you say we, it's not just you and I, because
Yes.
Guess what? Coming up, your co-host, Matt Bonaparte.
Yeah.
Matt
Woo.
Bonaparte. Quick
Thanks for
question,
the
Matt.
applause.
Are you any relation?
To Napoleon Bonaparte?
Yes.
Well, this is a funny story, PFS. Great uncle's name was Napoleon. He was an orphan. He comes over. He's got no last name. Ellis Island, they say this would be hilarious if his last name was Bonaparte. Bang, they slapped that off the back of Napoleon, called it a day. So technically, I am related to a Napoleon Bonaparte, not the Napoleon Bonaparte.
You know what? You caught me on a technicality, and you know what?
I did.
I will take you on that. Well, hey, good to have you aboard. Welcome to the Locked On Podcast Network. Grab yourself a Built Bar, and we'll talk a little bit about everything going on here. Let's just dive right into it. We're recording this during Memorial Day weekend, pulling the curtain back just a little bit on the show here. I hate to spoil the illusion that these are all recorded on the days you're listening, but the Blue Jays went into Anaheim. They went to Los Angeles. So where do the Angels play? So they don't play here. They don't even play in this county. No, I've been misinformed. And off they went to Anaheim. And they showed why a lot of people are picking them to win the division, especially on Sunday, where it was a really, it's a really tense pitcher's duel with a final score of 11-10. It just showed it was a weird back and forth game, but also showed that the offense for the Blue Jays, which in many ways goes wherever George Springer goes, But they got big hits from Bichette. They got big hits from Chapman, and from Gurriel.
What a day for Gurriel.
I think Gurriel has driven in 2 more runs since the beginning of this podcast, and I'm thinking you're starting to see the things starting to click right now for the Blue Jays. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts, what we saw this weekend, and just sort of moving forward as the team is, I think, as we're recording this now, about 7 or 8 games ahead of over 500.
Well, this is what we were hoping would happen for so long. I mean, this is the first series, the first road 4-game sweep, or first 4-game sweep since last September when they beat the Yankees down the stretch in the Bronx. But this was the first time this year where the Jays kind of took the opposing team to task and just won every game, not necessarily convincingly, a couple 1-run wins there, and especially Sunday's game where it was back and forth. That game went for 5 hours, it seemed. But it was finally a game where they showed no quit, and a series where they were really the no-quit Jays, and just a lot of fun to watch. And if you're a fan of the team, a lot of fun to be a fan of.
Yeah, the offense had by far its best series of the season, capped off by that 11-run performance. And yes, like stars like Springer were doing it, but they didn't start Vladdy, Teoscar Hernandez, or Danny Jansen in that game.
Yeah.
Like you said, 5 RBIs from Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Alejandro Kirk scored 4 times in that game. Kevin Biggio has woken up all of a sudden. He had an RBI double earlier in the series, big contributor in that game. The 1 through 9 of the lineup is really starting to show up, and the pitching has been there all year. So the pitching concern maybe late in this series, I don't think is as big of a deal. Huge wins for the Jays in Anaheim.
I think a big part, and again, this is coming from an outsider talking about the Jays, and I acknowledge that I'm an outsider talking about the Jays, but there was a point where they lost a game to Tampa. It was a walk-off game. It wasn't a walk-off, but they lost a game at Tampa, and they were on the verge of falling to 500. They were a game above 500, and you took a look at they had a gauntlet in front of them. They had a few games in Tampa. They had a few games against Seattle, who were off to a rough start, but they're a talented team. And then Cincinnati is Cincinnati, but then they knew they got the Cardinals coming up. They knew they had the Angels coming up, and they stumbled through that and found themselves basically crawling into June sub 500. This would have been a gut check time for the team. And so in a weird, it's funny to point to games in May as turnaround games, but that game where they lost the opener, they wound up losing the series to Tampa, and they wound up going to Seattle 1 game above 500. But you started to see they started winning series after that. And I wonder if you take a look at the season when it ends, you're going to look back to mid-May and say, okay, that's where they kind of woke up, that they're on the verge. Sure. They're going to Seattle 1 game over 500. They just got shut out in Tampa, and they fell to 18-17. And from that moment forward, while they haven't made up that much room against New York, they haven't fallen. If they had a crummy time, they'd be right now 11, 12 games out of first place and wondering what the hell is going on.
Yeah, and I think that this series in particular kind of showed the holes that they still have to fill, but also showed the resilience they have and their ability to fill those holes on the fly. I mean, we mentioned Jansen didn't even start on Sunday, and Alejandro Kirk was able to be there to kind of fill in, and Ben mentioned Kevin Biggio showing up. How about the bullpen? I mean, this was a game in which on Saturday you use 6 guys out of the pen, and on Sunday are pretty much left with nobody, and David Phelps has to come in to close the game. So Ryan Borucki was terrible. I think everybody wants to see him gone at this point. He was absolutely brutal. So he comes in, lets up the lead, and then you kind of have to look towards Yimi Garcia once again, who already pitched in this series. And then you have to look to David Phelps because you don't really have anybody else. So that was an issue that Ben and I have talked about plenty, where the bullpen is constantly overworked, but they just find a way to figure it out every single time. Now, do they need another piece in that bullpen by the deadline? I think absolutely you can't win a World Series with the current bullpen. It just won't happen. But right now it works. In May, at the end of May, in a series like this, it'll work.
It felt like a playoff series almost. They used Romano 3 times in 4
Yeah.
games. They used Simber 3 times in 4 games. They used Garcia 3 times in 4 games. Do you want to do that? No. But Charlie Montoya wanted these wins. He recognized, like you said, PFS, sometimes, in May, games can be more important than you think. Everyone thinks a game in May isn't that important, and then the Jays end up last year a game down of the wild card game, and all of a sudden you wish you would have won a game. And I think Charlie recognizes that. I do think they're looking for options to trade for. Also, Tim Meza, one of their highest leverage relievers, is in a throwing program here in Toronto. Maybe when the Jays get back here, he can think about rejoining the team. Nate Pearson, still one of their top prospects. He has made a rehab appearance in Dunedin, Single A. He could join the bullpen. So it's those two, I think, coming in the place of, 2 guys who gave up homers maybe in Barucki and Merriweather this series. And then you think about, okay, where can we add maybe one more nasty lefty or maybe another side armor? It works for Simber. So if you could add another pretty funky guy, that would be fun too.
Now, at the beginning of the year, and we'll be talking a little bit of my prediction. Beginning of the year, I did pick Toronto to win the pennant, and I needed to pick a Cy Young Award winner, and I kind of took a stab because sometimes the Cy Young Award winner is someone weird. Like, I'm just going to pick a random one, Robbie Ray. And so I picked Jose Barrios.
Bad shot. That's bad take.
Has not worked out.
Has not worked out, but like his last start, the start he had. He started the game in Anaheim where he didn't get out of the third. But his previous couple of starts were pretty good. Like, he was very good against Seattle. He was very good against Cincinnati. And a few starts before that, he was good against Boston.
But
I think
the problem with him...
Right.
Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say was that when you talk about that overtaxed bullpen, if you get a better second half out of Barrios or a better second half out of Ryu, then maybe you're not going to be taxing your bullpen as much if those two get off to slow starts. If they turn it around and even pretty good Barrios and pretty good Ryu is better than ERA over 5 Ryu and ERA over 5 Barrios. We've seen glimpses of the Barrios I thought he was going to be this year. And, maybe, that's right there. That's 40% of your rotation is forcing you to go deep into the bullpen. Where would they be if it wasn't for Manoah and Gausman at this point? But I think that maybe if they go into the next third of the season, looking at someone like Barrios, and hopefully he can turn some things around, that may fit well into their plans.
My problem with Barrios is that he's never shown in his time in the MLB that he won't give up a couple of runs. That'll just always kind of be his MO. Will he strike out plenty of guys? Sure. And he's going to go out there some days and look like the nastiest pitcher in baseball, like he has a couple of times this season, like the starts you mentioned, that Seattle start, the Cincinnati start. He's looked good a couple of times this year, but it only takes one home run for Barrios to be done. I mean, you saw it so early on yesterday, first or second inning. Ohtani, I think it was the first inning. Ohtani took him deep.
First inning.
And it was just kind of over right then and there. He's a flare guy. He's got incredible stuff. That slurve, the two-seamer, the whole bit with Barrios. And when he's on. But I just don't ever see a world where he's so consistent that he's going to go out there multiple starts in a row and just be nails. I like Barrios, and I think he's a good addition to this pen, but I do think it was a bit of a miscalculation to come into the season and think he was going to be the best guy on the staff when you got a guy, especially like Gausman, who's right next to him, who I think is a better pitcher.
Yeah, I have slightly higher hopes for Barrios. I mean, he is a guy who's put up, an ERA below 4 in, I think, every year of his career.
High
not,
threes,
it's like
though.
all but one. Yeah, but it's not 5s. Like, this isn't Jose.
Sure. He's still a good pitcher.
And give up like 3-ish runs. Not what he's doing right now, where he gives up, 5, 6-ish runs. He's getting hit, and it's a little bit confusing why, because the stuff is good. He doesn't walk that many guys. That's not really where he gets in trouble. On the Ryu front, if you go look at Ryu pre-injury and post-injury, when he comes off the IL. He's been much better since. He's pitched about 15 innings, and he's given up, I think it's 3 earned runs in those 15 innings since coming off the IL. So he's not a guy that necessarily goes super deep, but unlike what we saw from Barrios yesterday, Ryu, I feel fairly confident in to give you 5 to 6 quality innings. Like, I don't think he's going to give you 8 anytime. I don't think he's going to go out there and go 3 times through, but Ryu can solidify it. Kikuchi being good has helped them out. The offense too will ease the load on the bullpen, because that's where we started.
I was going to say,
offense is scoring better. It was a bit of an anomaly, I think, that when they scored well in this series, they happened to give up runs. But by the way, the Angels, one of the best offenses in baseball. Like, it's not a cup of coffee to go and
Trout
take
to
on.
0 for yesterday or Sunday.
Yeah, held Trout to 0 for. Ohtani didn't have a hit until that final game. I know he ends up with 2 homers, but he didn't have a hit. So, they are going to give up runs sometimes, but if they keep scoring like this, they're not going to be in this many close games.
Well, let me tell you, let me just bring this up. If they're going to keep scoring like this, okay, then it's going to be a really, really special moment for Blue Jays fans anywhere, because they may get the ring. And if you're looking to get a ring for a very special moment, may I recommend you go to BlueNile.com. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as your significant other with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Wouldn't it be great if BlueJays.com and BlueNile.com got together, made themselves a ring? Well, let me tell you something. The rings that you can get there, whether it's for engagement, whether it's for another special occasion, whether it's to finally match that World Series title from 1993 when I was in college and you guys probably weren't even born, that's not what I'm talking about. Look at, you can create the engagement ring of your significant other's dreams. They have online tools that let you choose the diamond shape. I like to pick diamond, size, clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft the perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. Now look at, if you're like me and you love to wear fine jewelry, but you're having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. If you're up, it's 2:30 in the morning, said, I need a bracelet. They're available by phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at any budget. So let me tell you something. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On MLB listeners will get $500 off. I'm sorry. Rephrase. I'm not even going to hit that out. Get $50 off any $500 purchase. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. Use code LOCKEDON. That's code LOCKEDON. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace. Go to BlueNile.com today. And hey, we have an important favor to ask you. We're putting together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like about, what you don't like about Locked On Podcasts. So go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. You get 5 of those. You can then go to BlueNile.com and get $50 off your purchase. To take our audience survey, go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey. Thanks so much for your help. We are here with Ben Schulman and Matt Bonaparte, who just went to BlueNile.com. Each spent $501 on jewelry. Got $50 off. I don't know what that converts to Canadian money, but I always think it's weird that there isn't as big a deal when Vladdy Guerrero Jr. comes up in Anaheim. His father's in the Hall of Fame. He won his MVP with the Angels. You know, he's not going to be playing in, they did the big thing when he hit the walk-off home run in Montreal in that exhibition game, 2 or 3 years ago, whatever that was.
Yeah, 3 years ago, I think it was now.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, because of this world we live in, because of the pandemic, when I say last year, I mean 2018. That's what I mean. You do understand that, right? When I say 10 years ago, I mean 1995. This is just how my brain works. I can't deal with something like this hot young prospect was born in 2006. What are you talking about? That's impossible. He's a baby. Vladdy's not having quite the season he had last year when he was a decision to pitch Shohei Ohtani away from winning the MVP. But that makes me scared for American League pitchers because I think people eventually become who they are. And I think that Vladdy is going to heat up. And I also think that we're seeing I don't think Teoscar Hernandez is a 170 hitter either. I think that you're going to see in the next third of the season some of these hitters coming back to where you thought they would be. And where that's very scary for the Yankees and other teams is with Barrios wetting the bed, with some of these players underperforming, they're still 7 games above 500.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you're slumping, and you're on, I believe, a 35 homer pace with about 100 RBIs. Yeah. So he's not hitting the way that he was last year. It's true. There was a somewhat prominent article put out on MLB.com that the book is out on Vladdy, and it describes throwing him off-speed pitches down and away. Welcome to Major League pitching. That's kind of how it works. But, he's still hitting the ball as much. They're pitching him down and away. People are giving him less pitches up in the zone. I would too. It makes a lot of sense. I do think he will get out of it. I think a big key for him is, like you said, Teoscar Hernandez, because why throw Vladimir Guerrero Jr. strikes? I mean, he, in this series, he knows no one's giving him strikes. There was a 3-0 count where he showed bunt just as a joke because he knew there was literally no chance he was going to get strikes. Teoscar has hits in his last 4 games. Not all of them are rockets, but he's getting on base more.
But he's got to get back, yeah.
He's got to get back, but we saw a little bit from everyone. Biggio, look, it's not great to be a 125 hitter, but he started the series 0-27. Matt Chapman, it's not great to be a 201 hitter. It's better than the 3 weeks he spent as a 180 hitter. I think once the lineup gets better and you can't walk people and put people on base for guys like Hernandez, like Chapman, like Lourdes Gurriel Jr., you have to give Vladdy better pitches. And once you throw him strikes, you're in trouble. If you have to do anything but nibble the corners, you're in a lot of trouble.
I think that's gonna. You alluded to this before. I didn't mean to stop on.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Napoleon, but by the way, that's. I'm only gonna call you Napoleon from now on.
You wouldn't be the first, and you won't be the last.
I'm only gonna call him Napoleon
because I have such an original nickname. Sully. Well, I really put my back into that one. I do think, and you alluded to it before, that the offense is going to help Barrios. That they're like I would bring up a name. I remember John Garland was a pitcher for the White Sox when they won the World Series in 2005, and he had a fine career. He was never an ace, but he was someone who gave him some innings, and he knew he had a good offense behind him. So if he let up 2 or 3, or sometimes even 4 runs, he knew the team was going to score 6 or 7 runs. And I know everyone's supposed to exist in a vacuum and you don't pitch to the scoreboard and blah, 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 blah. But if some of these bats heat up and Barrios starts to pitch better and he gives them 6 innings, 3 or 4 runs, then you're not going to have your bullpen go 3 or 4, 4 or 5 innings during a Barrios start. I mean, I think it's one of the things that when a team like this clicks, it kind of becomes a symbiotic relationship. I mean, I was in New York during the Joe Torre years. Yes, they had Rivera, locking down the 9th every time, but they didn't always have the Cy Young candidate. They didn't always have the best pitchers, but they always had a good enough pitcher and their offense was always productive enough that it all kind of fed off of each other. So by the time they got to October, they weren't gassed. I think this is a team designed for October, and I think that these elements will feed off of each other. The better offense will give Barrios confidence to throw strikes. His confidence to throw strikes will mean the bullpen doesn't have to pitch 4 or 5 innings. Them not pitching 4 or 5 innings means they're not gassed, blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, as I said, with things not clicking, they're 7 games above 500. With them clicking, I think this is a 95 to 100 win team if things are clicking.
Should be.
They're on a 93 win pace. 93 win pace right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I was going to say before about Vladdy and the lineup as a whole is you have to remember that the lineup itself was just emaciated for the first half of the season. You didn't have Teoscar, you didn't have Jansen. There was really nobody to protect Vlad in that lineup, and there was nobody. Like Ben said, you didn't have to throw him strikes. So we're at this point in the season now where all those guys are back and they're getting hot, and they're all going to regress to the mean and get a lot better because they aren't down there. They aren't 100 hitters. And if Matt Chapman can kind of put it on too, because he's been, let's not beat around the bush, he's been bad. And yesterday's or Sundays, we're just coming on a Wednesday, his hilarious. I don't know if you guys saw the ground ball and then the throw. That was fantastic. Hilarious. It was like Abbott and Costello. Like that was absolutely hilarious. But he'll get the bat going, and everybody kind of has to, because the other thing that I don't think people realize, and you said it, Sully, like these guys are supposed to exist in a vacuum, but if everybody starts hitting, they're going to bring everybody else up. If Vladdy starts going on a tear, he's going to bring the rest of the lineup up, and kind of vice versa. And it goes the same for the staff. If the ace can kind of get things going, you only need one good start in the week to inspire everybody else to pitch well. That's kind of what happens all the time in this sport. When a staff isn't pitching well and one guy goes out and throws a beaut, the rest of the staff kind of follows suit a lot of the time. So do I think the Jays are a couple pieces away, maybe a bat and a relief arm? Sure. But I do think that this team can totally win 95 to 100 games, like you said, without that.
Sorry, my mic.
I thought it was my headphones.
Oh, no,
so
I also thought it was my headphones.
No, you stunned me to silence, Matt. You stunned me to silence. I had no way to. Yeah, I was like, "What?" I didn't respond to that. I'm just gonna. Why my mic was on mute? Oh, I know why. I had to cough. I had to cough at one point. Now, with courtesy, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Good man.
And then, so God forbid, I turned the mute off. I'm not even gonna edit that out. As we're recording this. Toronto is doing a rematch of the 1993 ALCS with the Chicago White Sox,
and somehow Tony La Russa is still the manager.
Well, but he wasn't. He wasn't. Mr. Pedantic Sully. And then they're going to go and do a rematch of the 1991 ALCS when they play Minnesota. But then they're going to go off and do a rematch of the 1995 ALCS when they go to Kansas City. And then they're going to do a rematch of the greatest final week of games that I had seen up until that point from 1987 when they visit Detroit. But then they'll go to Baltimore to revisit the Ubaldo Jimenez coming in there. Under no circumstances do you pitch Zach Britton. If you're going to be eliminated, make sure you're using your seventh best when they play Baltimore. What I'm saying is there's a bunch of games that Chicago is a team like Toronto that a lot of people were picking to win the division, including your pal Sully. They've been disappointing, but they look like they're starting to find their footing. Minnesota's obviously off to a terrific start, and they're the division leaders. But then you have 6 days of tomato cans. Detroit's, everyone thought they were improving. So far, they've stunk. And Baltimore's got a Baltimore. That's 4 games. And this is the gauntlet of games you have before mid-June with the first showdown with the Yankees. And when you look at that schedule, yeah, they're playing the White Sox and the Twins. Those are 2 good teams. But you're playing them at home. You got to win those series. And if you can win these series, the 3 games against Chicago, the 3 games against Minnie, the 3 games against KC, the 3 games against Detroit, and the 4 games against Baltimore. If you could have a winning record in each one of those series and then head into New York, and New York has been playing great, obviously. But if you have images of a division title dancing in your head, then getting yourself, just taking each series as just win the series, just win the series, just win the series. By then, you probably will have chipped away and be 3 or 4 games back of New York by the time you do the first head-to-head matchup. And I think that's a big checkpoint between now and basically the next 2.5 weeks is a huge checkpoint for Toronto to get to chip away and get closer so they can really start to concentrate on moving in on the Yankees.
Absolutely. I mean, the difference between the Yankees this year and last year is that they are beating the bad teams more consistently, and they, have feasted for the most part, with
Which
the
you have to
exception of
do.
that.
Which
Yeah,
you
you
have
have
to
to do.
do. Yeah.
And the Jays, unfortunately, haven't gotten that many opportunities. At least according to Baseball Reference, they've had the third toughest schedule in all of baseball, toughest in the American League. The Yankees, on the other side, have had the fifth easiest schedule in all of baseball, according to Baseball Reference. So if you're going to gain on them, the Yankees are playing decent, but they've played tough teams recently, like the Rays where they got a split, like the White Sox where they got a split. The Jays have to hope for a little more there, and then they have to dominate the Orioles, KC, and
Right.
Detroit. Like
Yeah.
barely lose a game, maybe,
Well,
because they've not played the Yankees well, and
Well,
they have to find a way to get back from that.
Well, that was my point, that when you look at some of these teams, even with playing a good team from Chicago and a good team from Minnesota, those are at home. You got to win these series. If you this is how you chip away at it. I mean, I'm not going to trash. I mean, the Yankees have done everything they're supposed to do, and they've done so with an injured Stanton. They've done so with some other players that they've not been getting good production out of. They've done so with Nestor Cortez being the Cy Young front runner at this point. And so you got to give the team credit where credit is due. And I think a lot of people thought the Yankees were going to be a playoff team. They're not a 110 win team, which they were on pace to be for a while. But, I think that, and I said the same thing about last year. I think that about 3 or 4 games are going to separate having home field advantage throughout the American League playoff and missing the wild card game.
Yeah,
I think that there's
100%.
a bunch of teams all bunched together. And so it makes those head-to-head matchups so critical, as I was pointing out in the Tampa series. But also, you got to feast on this. I mean, a lot's gone wrong for the Blue Jays, and they're still very good.
Yeah, and I think that coming into this season, the AL East was, I mean, it's been what it is, which is the most competitive and most talented division in baseball. You came into this year with potentially 4 teams that could all win the division. Obviously,
Yeah.
the Red Sox got out to a rocky start, but Trevor Story has turned into Babe Ruth and kind of put them back on track, and they've been winning baseball games.
They won 7 out of 10 games. I mean, they're
Yeah,
starting
so
to
they're
turn.
right back in the mix.
Right.
The Orioles obviously are the bottom feeders, but they're not terrible
No.
like they have been in the past. So this is a really talented division. And when you get towards the top and you talk about the Yankees and the Blue Jays and the Rays, the Yankees came into this season with way lower expectations than I think last year, because the bad taste was in everybody's mouth of that wild card game where Cole just got rocked and they looked like a little league team. So
I enjoyed it.
But the Jays come into this year with incredibly high expectations, probably expectations that were a little bit too high and a little bit overhyped. So that was kind of balanced out, and the Yankees come out to this hot start, and it definitely is somewhat benefited because of that easy schedule that Ben talked about. But like you guys both said, you have to beat the bad teams, and that's exactly what they've done. So they're a good team doing their job. And then we haven't even talked about the Rays, who are still winning baseball games too.
Yeah.
So this is a division that, you're absolutely right, Sully, could be decided by such a small margin of whether or not you're going to be the best team in baseball or a wild card team.
Well, last year the Yankees lost a ton of games to Baltimore, which was the difference between them hosting
And
the
Detroit.
wild card game and not hosting, and Detroit as well. And if you just beat the teams you're supposed to beat, then you are going to be a surefire bet to get to the postseason. If you're going to make any bets, go to Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, sports developments, including this year's NBA Finals. Go Celtics! Major League Baseball scores. NHL Stanley Cup. Go San Jose Sharks! Oh, wait, they're not in it. And even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm not a huge hockey fan, although I do enjoy watching games when it's on. I can't help but think, as the Tampa Bay Lightning are itching to have a three-peat in the Stanley Cup Finals, what the good folks in Canada are thinking: oh, yes, Tampa Bay, please have a hockey dynasty. Oh, Tampa Bay, while it's been since 1993 since a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Oh, what other team hasn't won since 1993? That would be the Toronto Blue Jays. I know. I'm old enough. I was in college when they won the back-to-back World Series. I remember the greatest team to not make the playoffs I ever saw was the 1987 Toronto Blue Jays. Unbelievably star-studded team. Lost the division on the final day of the season. And the greatest outfield to not play in a World Series. George Bell, Lloyd Moseby, and Jesse Barfield. I mean, the talent on that team was stacked, and they were I was very happy when they won the World Series finally. I granted with a much different looking team in 92, but they still had mainstays like Jimmy Key and Tom Henke and Kelly Gruber and Manny Lee and a bunch of other, and Dave Stieb was on the team, but he was injured. Probably should be in the Hall of Fame, Dave Stieb, in my opinion.
Definitely should be in the Hall of Fame, Dave.
So you guys, I'm going to guess because you're you haven't started shaving and you're wearing short pants, have a gigantic lollipop and a little beanie hat, and you have Teletubbies on in the background, that TV that Matt just turned off. I'm guessing. Oh God, what the hell was that? What was that?
Syracuse
a Teletubby?
Orange.
Oh, I thought you were. I thought it was a Teletubby. I swear to God, I thought if you had a Teletubby at arm's length, then you know what? Then you're not old enough to buy something at BlueNile.com. So I'm guessing you guys were not yet around when Joe Carter touched them all. And by the way, how presumptuous was it for the announcer to claim he's never going to hit a bigger home run in his life?
It was a gamble. Certainly a gamble.
In the long game, Tom Cheek won.
True.
Tom Cheek won. Yeah, he in the long game he won. So
yeah. Sorry, my phone was going off.
This guy Sully's got tunes playing in the background.
I know. My phone just went off right there. But okay, so tell us a little bit your guys' history with the Blue Jays, and what was your
more tunes?
What was your and who was your guy growing up?
My guy, this will be tough because I kind of pulled Matt into the Blue Jays world, but he does have a guy, which I'm happy about. But my guy growing up was Roy Halladay. Mm-hmm. The Blue Jays didn't make the playoffs until I was 15 years old. You could do the math on how old we are. And that was the first time they'd made the playoffs since the 93 World Series. So there was not very much to be proud of when you were a Blue Jays fan. I like Delgado, but the only thing you could really be proud of is, hey, we might just have the best pitcher in baseball. And once every 5 days, Roy Halladay was going out there and pitching for the Jays. So he was my guy. Alex Rios, when I was like a little bit older, was also my guy, but Halladay's on a kind of another level.
I loved Halladay. I absolutely, may rest in peace. Because he was such an old school ace. He was such you handed the ball to him, you're going to go 9, at least 7 or 8. And I love ace pitchers. That's my favorite thing. And it makes me sad seeing that we're living in an era, and I'm going to sound like such old man Sully right now, but we're moving away from aces. We're moving away from every 5 days that my favorite player of all time is Pedro Martinez. And when I was younger, I loved Roger Clemens, but I also loved, when I was younger and Fernando pitched or Hershiser pitched, or Frankie Viola in his great year, or Brett Saberhagen. You're like, okay, they're pitching today. And that became their personality was stamped on that game. Randy Johnson, their personality was stamped on that game. And now it's, if you go 4 innings and then there's the parade of bullpen guys coming in, the personality of the game is not there. The greatest game I ever saw live was a game between Greg Maddux and Curt Schilling that I saw in Atlanta must have been 1998, because Schilling was still pitching for Philadelphia at the time. The game was 2 hours. I think it was less than 2 hours. And you had Maddux and Schilling throwing BBs. And it was just exhilarating to watch that. But anyway, that's Halladay I loved that. And when he went to Philadelphia, it was very clear they were just going to go to the World Series for the next 10 years. It didn't happen. But that's a great choice. All right, Matt. Now I want to hear what this means that Ben pulled you into Blue Jaydom.
Yeah, so to pull the curtain back a bit, Ben did pull me into this Blue Jays. world, as I grew up a Yankees fan and still am one, which is going to be heartbreaking for you, Sully.
I don't care.
But
look at everyone can root for a team that can't make it through the World Series. That's fine.
Man. Hey,
nice.
End of the year is going to be a lot different.
We got to swap you guys out. Get you
We're now into the second decade of the Yankees not winning a pennant, and it's fine. It's fine.
I didn't come on here for slander. That's all I'm saying. But for a Blue Jays guy, I actually did have him growing up because obviously I watched them play all the time.
Yeah.
Ricky Romero was my dude. I loved that guy.
Yeah, he was good.
I was, like you said, being a fan of an ace, that was a big thing for me as well. So Ricky Romero, who had that role for a little while and also was a lefty, I could watch lefties shut down hitters all day long. I mean, Ricky Romero was just so much fun, though his career was a little bit short-lived. I loved him. I thought he was so much fun to watch every time out. I wish he pitched for a lot longer, but Ricky was just so much fun, man. And I hated playing against him, but I loved waking up and watching him on Quick Pitch every morning. He was the man.
So give me your favorite Blue Jays? Well, which is the one you watch on YouTube? Which is the one that you click onto? What is your favorite Blue Jay moment?
Do you want to take it or should I?
Well,
I can take it.
Go ahead. I could go.
I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go.
Okay. I'll take it first. So it would be too simple to say the bat flip. But I was at that game, so that is but it's the whole inning. That seventh inning against Texas, in the top of the inning where Shin-Soo Choo's arm, and it totally legally because he was in the box doing what he was doing, gets hit by Russell Martin's throwback. And the Rangers score a run, and the Jays were down 2-0 in that series. And that was just the start of a rivalry with the Rangers that kind of still persists. And then, the errors from Elvis Andrus and Dalton Pompey's speed and Donaldson's bloop single, everything that set up the bat flip. And then, of course, Sam Dyson hanging one and Jose Bautista banging one. That was the first triumph of kind of my Blue Jay life because they hadn't made the playoffs until 2015 in my lifetime. So to see them, go down 2-0, it's going to be the same old. It's just like the Leafs. They'll never come through. And then they finally come through and pick up a huge win and make that run to the ALCS. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to pick that one, but I'm going to go a little bit different route. 2010, Jose Bautista breaking onto the scene, hitting 54 home runs, quite literally out of nowhere. Was really cool. To have him in my division wasn't, but to see a guy just come out of nowhere and hit 50 home runs, which is a huge feat for hitters, was cool. And every now and again, I will watch all those compilations of him just smacking tanks all year long because it was weird. It was this dude who I've literally never heard of is now the best home run hitter in the AL, and it's not close.
There is a moment for me that I've watched. I do love watching clips. And there is a moment for me, and this may sound a little strange, but there's a Blue Jays moment that I really love, a postseason Blue Jays moment that isn't from 92 or 93, a recent one. Because I don't want to show. In my day, that's when Kelly Gruber hit that home run. Even though I did that earlier. But the final game of the division series, not the bat flip year, but the next year, where the Blue Jays were the wild card team, they had won with the Encarnacion homer.
Yeah, the Britain game.
Yeah, and then I actually thought Texas, because they had Darvish and they had Hamels, I thought they were going to go far. I actually thought they were the team that was going to. I thought they could hit, and they had two ace pitchers. I thought they were going to go to the World Series, actually. And they won the Blue Jays won the first two games in Texas. And then you had that game 3, which was a weird game that went on that Sanchez got the start in that game. The Rangers wound up tying the game in, I actually have the game up here. The Rangers wound up tying the game they took the lead in the 6th. Then the Blue Jays tied it on a passed ball in the bottom of the 6th. And Matt Bush, remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Number 1 pick overall, who became a mop-up reliever. And Donaldson doubled, and then there was that weird play where Russell Martin grounds out, and you think it's a double play, and the first baseman doesn't hold on to the ball, and then Donaldson races home. I remember I was listening to that game on the radio driving and on the national feed, and it was so confusing. Like, what? Wait, they got a double play. They end the inning. No, they didn't. In fact, the series is over. What is happening? And so it was, I don't remember who the national broadcaster, may have been Dan Shulman, no relation, unless maybe he is. And
he is my father.
Oh, he is?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. And by the way, I'll just say this, Dan Shulman, great announcer, fantastic announcer. And I love listening to most of the 2018 World Series in my car driving. So I was listening to your pop, calling the games. And so that was, I hope you know, I'm not,
no
worries.
I
think he's a terrific announcer, but I actually don't even know I don't remember if he was the announcer or not for that game. I just remember thinking, what the hell just happened? And so I remember specifically, I couldn't wait to get home and watch the highlight to be like, oh, that's because it was like, double play. No, he didn't have it. Here comes Donaldson. Wait a minute, here comes Donaldson. He's at third. Yeah, and the series is over. What just happened? And by the way, that for me personally illustrates why I love balls in play. Because
don't we all?
Hit the ball into play and stuff can happen. Walks, all right, nothing happens. Strikeouts, nothing happens. Even home run, all right, nothing happens. I love it when I don't know what's happening right now. The ball went here, the runner went there, and that was the end of a series. And it's one of the weirdest endings of any postseason series ever, which is why I've enjoyed watching it.
Congratulations to Russell Martin, who helped drive in that run. By the way, he just retired, so his career wrapped up. But yeah, that was awesome. I mean, that was the culmination and kind of the final nail in the coffin on who won that little rivalry between the Jays and Rangers, because it spurred the whole, well, I'll take a punch in May because I'd rather not get knocked out in October deal. So 2 years in a row to beat Texas, and that time to sweep them, in a light where we weren't unfortunately having to dance around the Josh Donaldson name, was definitely a really fun time. And that team was just so fun. I mean, 2015 and 2016, they hit homers, but they also, they were, you could argue, the best offense in baseball when they were lining up. Donaldson, Bautista, Encarnacion, at one point Chris Colabello, and some other guys. It was a really good team to watch.
Chris Colabello, what a name.
Yeah, well, unceremonious end.
Yeah.
Well, I know two people who have great names too. That is the combination of Shulman and Bonaparte. Your dad's a great announcer. You're a great podcaster. Your great uncle did a great job conquering most of Europe. I'm sorry about the whole Waterloo thing. But
you try not to bring it up.
That must hurt. Hey, tell us where they can follow your terrific podcast, and welcome aboard to the Locked On MLB family.
At Locked On Jays on Twitter, baby. That's where you can find everything. We got to grow that Twitter following. We're up about 150 followers, but we want that to be a little bit higher. And then, we're on YouTube. We have about 7 subscribers, so we're hoping that can go up too.
I wore number 7.
You're going to get the Sully bump. You'll get up to 9 now.
Boom.
That's big. Sully bump will help. What about the 78 million?
Well, I'm very, very careful for the person.
We can only get 2 of them? That's brutal.
I'm miserly. We're not Canadians. We're not Canadians. We don't hand stuff out.
Whoa. Okay.
I just lost some listeners. I'm down to 77 million. There goes my listeners in Quebec.
You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you want it. We got it every day, 5 days a week. Jays is starting to heat up, and trade deadline will be interesting. So a lot of good content going on there.
Well, and we've been talking for nearly an hour here, so let's just wrap
Yes.
this up. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pod, same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, but Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the Jays with Napoleon and Dan. I'm sorry. I'm such a jerk. With Ben Shulman and Matt, don't call me Napoleon Bonaparte. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.